There is a distance so small that the universe itself refuses to let you see beyond it. Not because our technology isn't advanced enough, not because our math is incomplete, but because reality physically breaks if you try. At exactly 1.6 times 10 superscript 3 meters, the laws of physics stop working. Space loses its meaning. Time dissolves. Matter ceases to exist. And what's left is something no one fully understands. This distance is called the Planck length. And tonight we are going to travel there. But before we do, I need you to consider something carefully. What if the universe is hiding something from us on purpose? You've been told science is about discovery, about pushing deeper, smaller, further. But there is one place science cannot go. A boundary that no experiment, no particle accelerator, no equation can cross. The Planck length isn't just small. It is forbidden. And the reason why changes everything we think we know about existence. Stay with me, because once you understand this boundary, you'll never look at reality the same way again. Let's start with perspective. A human hair is about 100,000 nanometers wide. An atom is about 0.1 nanometers. A proton is smaller still. And inside the proton, quarks, particles so small we can barely describe them. But even quarks are giants compared to the Planck length. The Planck length is so small that if an atom were the size of the observable universe, the Planck length would still be smaller than a single grain of sand. It is not just small, it is absurdly small. And yet, this tiny distance defines the absolute limit of reality. Below it, nothing works. Here's the first disturbing clue. To measure something smaller, you need more energy. That's not philosophy, that's physics. The tighter you squeeze energy into a smaller space, the stronger gravity becomes. At the Planck length, the energy required to measure anything becomes so intense, it collapses into a black hole. Let that sink in. The act of trying to observe reality at this scale destroys the region you're trying to observe. The universe doesn't allow inspection. It shuts the door. Ask yourself this: why would reality be designed to prevent observation at its deepest level? This isn't a metaphor. At the Planck scale, space-time becomes so curved that tiny black holes form instantly. They don't behave like cosmic black holes. They flash into existence and vanish before anything can fall inside. Physicists call this quantum foam. Reality bubbling, collapsing, reforming. The foundation of the universe is not stable. It's violent, chaotic, alive. And yet, everything around you appears calm. That should bother you. Here's the second warning sign. We have two powerful theories: quantum mechanics, governing the very small general relativity, governing gravity and space-time. Each works beautifully until you combine them. At the Planck scale, their equations don't just fail. They explode into contradictions. Infinity appears everywhere. Time goes negative. Distances collapse to zero. Energy becomes undefined. This is not a math problem. It's a signal. Physics is telling us something important. Our understanding of reality is incomplete. Now we reach the question most people never ask. What if space itself isn't fundamental? What if space is not a container, but an illusion? At the Planck scale, distances blur. You can't say where something is. Here and there lose meaning, which suggests something radical. Space may be emergent, not fundamental. Just like temperature doesn't exist in a single atom, space might only exist when enough information organizes itself. Below that, there is no space. Some physicists believe the universe is not made of matter. It's made of information, not data like numbers on a screen, but fundamental logical structure. Every particle, every force, every interaction, all encoded. If that's true, then the Planck length is not a distance. It's a pixel, the smallest unit of reality the universe can render. Zoom in further, and the image breaks, just like a digital photograph. Let me ask you something directly. If reality is pixelated, what exists between the pixels? Hold on to that thought, because the answer is unsettling. At this scale, time behaves strangely. The equations suggest that time doesn't flow smoothly. Ticks, frame by frame, Reality may be refreshing itself billions of times per second, and your consciousness stitches those frames together, creating the illusion of continuity. If that's true, what happens between the frames? Between those frames, physics has nothing to say. No equations, no predictions, no laws, just silence. Some physicists believe those gaps are where the true nature of reality exists. Outside space, outside time, a deeper layer, one that physics cannot describe, because physics emerges from it. Think about what this means. If space and time dissolve at the Planck scale, then everything you experience rests on something deeper, something hidden, something protected, and suddenly the question changes. It's no longer, what is the universe made of? It becomes, what is the universe protecting? In part 2, we're going to explore the most disturbing possibility yet, that the Planck length is not a limit, but a doorway, and that consciousness itself may be woven into the fabric beneath reality. Before you leave, ask yourself this: if reality breaks at its smallest scale, where do you truly exist? Because the answer changes everything. There is a moment in every scientific discovery when curiosity turns into fear. Part 2 begins at that moment. Because once you accept that reality breaks at the Planck length, the next question becomes unavoidable. What happens if the equations are not wrong, but incomplete on purpose? Most people are taught a single clean version of Einstein's most famous formula.
E equals mc².
Energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. It is presented as elegant, safe, final. But what almost no one tells you is this: Einstein's equations do not forbid another solution. A solution where energy becomes negative, where mass behaves in reverse, where the sign flips, E equals negative mc². This is not science fiction. It is mathematics. And when physicists follow this version of the equation, something very strange happens. Reality begins to misbehave. Negative energy is not just less energy. It is energy that behaves opposite to everything you understand. Instead of attracting, it repels. Instead of slowing time, it can reverse time's direction locally. Instead of adding weight, it removes it. In normal conditions, negative energy is impossible to isolate. The universe seems to actively suppress it. But at the Planck scale, the rules loosen. Tiny fluctuations of negative energy appear for fractions of a second. They are born inside quantum foam, and they vanish almost instantly, yet their effects are real. These fluctuations can bend space-time in the opposite direction of gravity. They can cancel mass. They can punch microscopic holes in the structure of reality. This is where the idea of warp drives, wormholes, and faster-than-light travel comes from. Not from exotic engines, but from manipulating negative energy. And here is the disturbing part. Every theoretical model that allows faster-than-light travel requires one thing: negative energy, which brings us to an uncomfortable realization. The universe does not forbid faster-than-light travel because it is impossible. It forbids it because it destabilizes reality. When negative energy is introduced, space-time no longer behaves like a smooth surface. It folds, it twists, it disconnects cause from effect. If you could generate enough negative energy in one place, space-time would tear. Not explode, tear, like fabric pulled too hard. At the Planck scale, this tearing happens constantly. Tiny rips in space-time open and close faster than time can measure. These rips are not holes in space. They are failures of geometry itself. There is no inside them, only undefined structure. And this is where physics starts whispering something unsettling. These failures look less like damage and more like access points. Access to what? To the layer beneath space-time. A layer where energy does not behave normally, where distance is meaningless, where time is not directional. Some physicists describe this layer as pre-geometric, meaning geometry does not exist yet. No up, no down, no before, no after, only relations, only information, only connection. At this level, the universe does not look like matter. It looks like logic. And if that sounds abstract, consider this. Your brain does not store thoughts as matter. It stores them as patterns of information. Your identity is not a particle. It is structure, which raises a question that physics can no longer avoid. If the foundation of reality is informational, then what is consciousness made of at the Planck scale? The distinction between observer and observed begins to blur. Quantum experiments already show this. Particles do not behave the same when observed. Measurement affects outcome. At everyday scales, this effect is small. At the Planck scale, it becomes absolute. Nothing exists independently of interaction. Reality does not happen. It is negotiated. This has led some physicists to propose something radical: that consciousness is not produced by the universe. The universe is produced in a way that allows consciousness to exist. In other words, awareness may not be a byproduct. It may be a requirement. The deeper you go, the harder it becomes to separate physics from experience. At the Planck scale, space-time behaves like a computational process. Each unit of space acts like a logic gate. Each interaction is a calculation. The universe is not a thing. It is an event, continuously updating itself. And the Planck length is the resolution limit of that update. Below it, the universe does not render more detail. It refreshes. If reality refreshes, then time does not flow. It advances in steps. Each moment you experience is a reconstructed state, which means something truly strange. There is no continuous past, only a memory encoded into the present state of the universe. The future does not exist yet, only probabilities waiting to be rendered. And between each render, there is a gap. Physics cannot describe what exists in that gap, but something must, because something decides what the next frame will be. Some scientists believe this decision process is random. Others believe it follows deep mathematical constraints. And a few believe it is connected to awareness itself. Not human awareness, but a universal form of information sensitivity. A system that responds to interaction, that reacts to observation, that adjusts outcomes. If that sounds unsettling, it should, because it suggests that reality is not passive. It listens, it responds, it adapts. And this brings us to the most dangerous idea in modern physics. What if the Planck boundary is not a limit of size, but a firewall, a protection layer, a boundary designed to prevent internal observers from accessing the core process that generates reality? Just like a program does not allow its characters to inspect its source code. Any attempt to probe deeper crashes the system, creates black holes, destroys structure, not because it is fragile, but because it is protected, which leads to a final question for this part. If reality is generated from beneath spacetime, and if consciousness interacts with that generation, then what happens when biological consciousness shuts down? Does awareness end, or does it disconnect? Physics cannot answer this yet, but the equations do not forbid continuation. They only forbid physical interaction, and that difference matters. In part 3, we will confront the final implications. Why the universe has a smallest scale, why it hides its foundation, and what that means for identity, death, and existence itself. Before moving on, consider this carefully. If you are not fundamentally made of matter, but of information, then what exactly are you? And where do you exist when space and time fall apart? Part 3 is where everything comes together. At some point, every honest exploration of reality arrives at a conclusion that feels less like science and more like a revelation. Part 3 begins there, because once you accept that space, time, mass, and energy all break down at the Planck scale, only one possibility remains. Reality is not built from things. It is built from rules, and rules do not exist inside space. Space exists because of rules. This reverses everything you were taught. You do not live in the universe. You live as a process inside it. At the smallest scale, the universe is not matter interacting in space. It is a continuous update of relationships, a self-consistent system that rewrites itself moment by moment. The Planck length is the point where this rewriting becomes visible as failure, where the illusion of solidity collapses, where the universe stops pretending to be smooth, And what appears beneath that illusion is not chaos. It is structure too deep to look physical. This is why the universe enforces a limit. Not because it is hiding emptiness, but because it is hiding its engine. Think about this carefully. Every system that generates something complex protects its core. Cells protect DNA. Brains protect neural processes. Software protects source code. The universe does the same. The Planck boundary is not the end of reality. It is the edge of accessibility. Beyond it, the rules that generate existence cannot be safely observed from inside the system they create. That is why measurement causes collapse. That is why black holes form. That is why equations explode. You are not supposed to see beneath, and yet, something in you wants to. That curiosity is not accidental. Because here is the final connection most people never make. If reality is generated from a deeper layer of information, and if consciousness responds to information, then consciousness is not a late arrival in the universe. It is an original feature. Your awareness is not an accident of chemistry. It is an interface, a way for the universe to experience itself locally. At the Planck scale, there is no distinction between observer and process. Observation is interaction.
Interaction is creation.
This means something profound. Reality does not exist fully until it is experienced. Not by humans specifically, but by awareness in general. Every conscious moment is a negotiation between the deep structure of the universe and the current state it allows to exist. You are not watching reality. You are participating in its rendering. This is why meaning feels real, why choices feel real, why identity persists even though the atoms in your body constantly change. You are not the atoms. You are the pattern they temporarily express. And patterns do not vanish when matter rearranges. They disconnect. They dissolve from one representation and reappear in another. Physics does not yet know where, but it does know something crucial. Information is never destroyed. Not in black holes. Not at the end of time. Not at the Planck scale. It only transforms. Which leads to the quiet conclusion hiding beneath all this science. If the universe has a smallest distance, a smallest time, a smallest unit of information, then existence is not infinite chaos. It is finite structure, carefully constrained, deliberately ordered, and that means the universe is not indifferent. It is consistent, predictable at its deepest level, not random, and not meaningless. The Planck length is the signature of that consistency, a reminder that reality is not bottomless, that it has a foundation, and that foundation is not physical. It is logical, experiential, aware. So when you look at the world and feel small, remember this: you exist at a scale where reality works. You are not beneath the limit. You are above it. You are where meaning can exist, where questions can be asked, where wonder is possible. The universe breaks at the Planck length, so that experience can exist above it. And maybe that is the point. Maybe reality hides its deepest layer not to keep secrets, but to allow life, consciousness, and understanding to emerge without collapsing the system. Before this journey ends, I want to ask you one final question. If reality ends at a scale you can never reach, but meaning exists at the scale where you live, then which one is more fundamental? The universe beneath you, or the awareness reading these words right now? Think about that, because the answer isn't written in equations. It's written in experience, and that experience is you.